who was Shirley Temple when the lights dimmed and the set was quiet? Let's explore that, the untold story of Shirley Temple's life.
Show you the grandest thoroughfare.
The battle she fought and the triumphs that followed. The dark side of Hollywood is well known today, but when Shirley was young and coming up in the business, there wasn't as much of a spotlight on these very real and very dark realities. Stay tuned to find out which project she described as a cynical exploitation of our childish innocence, plus some other wild Hollywood stories.
Hey, what did the blue jay say to the little...
I mean, let's face it, Shirley Temple made so many of us smile growing up, but she fought hard against some of the most evil and perverse characters you can even think of. There was quite literally a punishment box, but I won't punish you any longer. Let's dive in.
Broadway's not what it used to be.
Exploited young. Shirley Temple, born on April 23, 1928 in sunny Santa Monica, California, she seemed destined for stardom almost from the start. You see, her mother, Gertrude, had always dreamed of a career in showbiz herself, and so when Shirley came along, she poured every ounce of that ambition into her little girl. Which, yeah, probably warrants a talk about celeb parents living vicariously through their poor kids. By the time Shirley was 3, she was taking dance lessons, singing lessons, and even working on her acting chops, again at 3. And those iconic golden curls we all remember. Yep, that was Gertrude as well, who styled Shirley's hair to perfection, determined to create a star. And as we all know, she did. I mean, it sounds so sweet and picture perfect. But Shirley's journey was anything but that. Because although she represented the perfect normal little girl, her life was very different than all the other little girls. Even though Shirley was brimming with talent, she was just a kid, and like any kid, she had her shy moments. At the studio, she'd sometimes hide behind the piano, peeking out at the action like a curious little mouse. But even then, she had something special that caught the eye of a casting director from Educational Pictures. Before long, she had a contract in hand and was thrown into the whirlwind of Hollywood with baby burlesks. These were comedy shorts featuring kids dressed up like adults, satirizing the latest film trends. Sounds totally cute and innocent and fun, right? God, I wish. Turns out, Shirley would later describe baby burlesks as a dark and troubling intro into show business. In her autobiography, she did not mince words, calling it, quote, a cynical exploitation of our childish innocence. Whatever you think that means, it does, and a lot more. The skits often played with racist and sexist themes, wrapped up in a bit of humor that completely flew over the kids' heads. Imagine being a kid, too young to understand what you're actually acting out, but being part of something that would raise eyebrows today. For Shirley, it was a crash course in the darker side of Hollywood, and she was barely old enough to tie her own shoes. You want some examples? I got it. Well, one short, Polly Tix in Washington, really stands out. Of course for the wrong reasons. Shirley's character was clearly a stand-in for a prostitute, prancing into baby senators' offices after fussing over her looks and jewelry. The two exchanged kisses, and the whole thing was played off, yes, as a comedy, haha. I mean, today, seriously, I can't even believe this happened, let alone that it was considered entertainment. Nowadays, child stars do have stricter protections, but back then, it was a complete free-for-all. Shirley Temple's story was just beginning, but even at this young age, she was already facing challenges most of us could never imagine. Physical punishments. You know, as much as we all love Shirley Temple on screen, what went on behind those scenes wasn't always so rosy. Back in the days of baby burlesques, discipline for child actors was downright shocking. Take this one. The director, Charles Lamont, had something called the punishment box. Yeah, that sounds awful already. Don't worry, it gets worse. It was a tiny, soundproof room with a block of ice for a seat, and if a child misbehaved on set, yeah, that's where they'd end up, sitting on that freezing block of ice in the dark. And our favorite, Shirley Temple herself, got sent there more than once and called this entire thing just another way they took advantage of kids. Honestly, it's hard to imagine anyone thinking this was okay, even back then. Shirley eventually mustered the courage to tell her mother about it, hoping for a little support, but leave it to Gertrude to not support her. She didn't believe her. Can you imagine that? Being told you're making it up while you're sitting there with a frozen backside. But getting that treatment from someone who's supposed to be your biggest protector, that's a pretty cold response, literally and figuratively. And it wasn't just Shirley who went through this. All the kids on those sets were subject to these harsh lessons. I don't even want to call it that because it's not a lesson. They weren't taught anything but fear. It's one of those stories that puts the hardships of old Hollywood into perspective, especially for the youngest stars who had no voice in the matter. And Shirley worked hard. She didn't just deal with icy punishments, she pushed through injuries and illness too. One day she'd be on the set after ear surgery, and the next she'd be working with a hurt foot. There was just no such thing as calling out sick. And get this, in 1934 alone, she starred in 12 films. 12. That's a grueling schedule for anyone, let alone a child. But that was the reality back then for Shirley Temple. Everyone's favorite evil director Charles Lamont would remind the kids, saying, "This isn't playtime, it's work." It kind of makes you wonder how she found the strength to keep going, and what kind of childhood is that even? At her age, I was making mud pies with my brother, and teaching my kid sister the places mom and dad hid the cookies so we wouldn't get them before dessert. But if we pulled that in Shirley's world, they would have tossed us in the punishment box and thrown away the key.
Theme song. You know that song, don't you?
Sure I do.
Well, then sing it. Come on.
But here's the thing about Shirley Temple, she actually did always find a way to hold on to her childhood. After the camera stopped, she'd grab any chance she could to just be a regular kid. Reportedly, she loved climbing trees, playing cops and robbers, and just letting loose like a kid. And I think it's a very small but powerful spark of hope. To think about those moments, knowing how much they must have meant to her. Even with all the pressure and responsibilities, she managed to carve out a little space to just be Shirley the tomboy, not Shirley the superstar. Just don't think too hard about how it was no thanks to any of the adults in her life. Quite the opposite, actually. And here's another warning for just how dark things got. Exposed young. You know, I was just reading about Shirley Temple. That's why we did this video. And I've got to tell you, what that poor girl went through in Hollywood just breaks my heart. You might not want to believe this, but when Shirley Temple was just 12 years old, just a child, mind you, she had a horrible experience at MGM. They called her in for what was supposed to be a professional meeting with this producer, Arthur Freed. And what does this bottom-of-the-barrel human scum of a person do? He exposes himself to a child. Can you even imagine that? Then he said something horrible like, "I have something made just for you." Jeez. Poor little thing could only respond with nervous laughter, of course, and then he had the nerve to get angry and throw her out of his office.
And I laughed uproariously. I had tears, and he got infuriated. And he said, "Out, out, out, go."
But you know what's really devastating? That wasn't even the end of it. When Shirley was 17, another big shot producer, David O. Selznick, pulled something similar. Get this, that scumbag had a fancy remote-controlled lock on his office door, and he trapped her right in there with him. Thank goodness she was such a talented dancer, because she had to literally dodge around the furniture to get away from him when he tried to grab her. And that's not it, there were others. One producer had the gall to tell her that sex is like water, if you want some, get some. I mean, who says that to anyone, let alone a young girl? Then there was a comedian, George Jessel. He tried to grope her and lift her skirt. But you know what? That Spitfire kicked him right in the groin. Good for you, Shirley, good for you.
It's all right. There's no one here but me, and I've been up for simply ages.
It really broke my heart reading about this. And you know, when I think about how many young stars went through things like this, it really makes you wonder what else went on in those days we never really heard about. These were powerful men preying on young girls who were just trying to do their jobs. It's just heartbreaking, isn't it? Stolen fortune. It's no exaggeration to say that Shirley Temple was a one-woman powerhouse in her day.
You're a nice boy, Jerry, but you're callow.
Not too callow to bite.
Growing up in the midst of a recovering America, she wasn't just a beloved star, she was a financial juggernaut. By the time she was 14, Shirley had earned a staggering $3 million. Carry the one, dot the I's, cross the T's, convert to today's money, and that's more than $30 million by the time she was 14.
I'm so unhappy.
To top it off, she practically saved 20th Century Fox, which was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy when she started her career. You'd think that all that money would set her up for life, right? That will secure her future, right? Then how by adulthood was her bank account just $44,000? From millions to barely enough for a modest home. What on earth happened?
And what I actually had was $44,000.
Well, turns out Shirley's dad, George, wasn't exactly a financial wizard, to put it incredibly mildly. He was supposed to manage her earnings responsibly, but let's just say he didn't stick to the plan. Instead of putting all her earnings into a court-ordered trust fund as required, he dipped into the pot, and not just a little. When Shirley finally discovered what had happened, the fortune she'd worked so hard for and was abused for was nearly gone. Clearly, I would be furious. I think most people would be furious, you know. But Shirley Temple, she had a different reaction. She later said that she felt neither disappointment nor anger.
Goodbye, Ken.
Which, let's be honest, is a level of grace that most of us can only dream of. In case you needed more reasons to be in complete awe of her, Shirley's response is one of the many reasons that people admired her. Even after learning the full extent of the financial mess, Shirley Temple chose to move forward instead of dwelling on the betrayal and the loss of funds. Maybe it was the resilience she already had to build like a fortress, or maybe her ability to focus on what really mattered, but she did not let it break her. She understood that money, while important, wasn't everything, but still you have to wonder how different her life might have been if her earnings had been protected the way they were supposed to be.
Townsend, who's his chestnut gilding? Wasn't it priceless?
Of course, Shirley wasn't one to dwell on what ifs, but instead she kept pushing forward, building a life and career beyond the fame of her childhood. But it's a tough pill to swallow, knowing she poured her heart and soul into 40+ films only to have so little to show for it financially. A reminder that even the brightest stars aren't immune to challenges, but the truly remarkable ones find a way to shine through the darkness.
Sorry, have to act the gap. Be seeing you.
Stranger than fiction. Shirley Temple wasn't just a star, she was an entire phenomenon. Wherever she worked, whether it was 20th Century Fox, Universal, or Warner Brothers, her career thrived. But it wasn't even just about her films. Shirley was a symbol of hope for a struggling nation clawing its way out of the Great Depression. She was in advertisements everywhere, 20 times a day no less. Her image was plastered on everything from dolls to dishes.
3 Shirley Temple classic family films, beautifully restored in black and white.
There were even Shirley Temple look-alike contests, which I hope Gertrude did all the hair for. This girl became such a cultural force that people started calling her a one-kid economic relief program. It's kind of insane to think about how much she contributed, and not just to entertainment, but to the economy itself. And yet, with all that fame came an enormous amount of scrutiny, some of it downright bizarre.
We got him! We got him! You think this is fresh? I hope so.
For one, some people didn't even believe Shirley was a kid. There was this persistent rumor that she was actually an adult with dwarfism. Can you imagine that? People pointed to her sturdy frame as proof of their incredibly wild theory. Things got so out of hand that the Vatican even sent someone to investigate and confirm her age. Let that sink in. People couldn't accept that a child could be so talented and composed. In a way, maybe they weren't entirely wrong. Shirley was often treated like an adult, but all that responsibility was still on the tiny shoulders of a real little girl.
We've got to find a bluebird. It's terribly important. A bluebird?
Then Shirley's teeth came under fire. More proof. People were baffled by how she never seemed to have missing teeth. You know, the rite of passage for kids. Well, she did lose teeth like everyone else, but Shirley had a clever way to keep things under wraps. Sometimes she'd just keep her mouth closed while performing, or she'd dance in a way that distracted from the gaps. She also wore dental caps to fill in the blanks, keeping her smile, you know, camera ready at all times.
That great big handsome Romeo, I'm presenting you.
Then there was her hair. Some accused her of wearing a wig, but no, those golden curls were the real deal. The real painful deal. Her mother Gertrude styled them meticulously into a look called pin curls, with exactly 56 curls every time. Talk about dedication. Talk about crazy. And hey, if you're ever thinking about dressing as Shirley Temple for Halloween, now you've got the hair styling specs. But Shirley wasn't just about the looks and the talent. She had her name attached to some pretty iconic creations. Her signature hairstyle, of course, and even some dance moves became the stuff of legend. And we can't forget that iconic Shirley Temple drink. As the story goes, she was at the Brown Derby restaurant when they served her a sweet, non-alcoholic concoction in her honor. Funny enough, she didn't even like it, but kids everywhere owe her a big thank you for making restaurants so much more fun, especially for the servers. But of course, not all the attention she got was the good kind. There were plenty of odd and frankly scary moments, one of the strangest, I think. A woman once accused Shirley of stealing her daughter's soul. Yeah, she actually believed the only way to free her child was to kill Shirley. It kind of sounds like something out of a Quentin Tarantino film, but this wasn't fiction. Security even caught the woman pointing a gun at Shirley while she was on stage. I mean, thank God they stopped her before anything tragic could happen, but it's just another reminder of how intense and dangerous the spotlight was. As if Hollywood hadn't already tried its best to take everything else from her, things got worse. Husband and health horrors. Shirley Temple's life might have seemed picture perfect to the public, but behind the scenes, things were far more complicated, especially in her personal life. At just 17 years old, Shirley married film and TV actor John Agar.
As a child movie star, plays her greatest role at 17.
By 1948, she was a mother to their daughter, Linda Susan, but what should have been a happy time turned dangerous. Agar, as it turned out, was a violent alcoholic. Oh, and he also cheated on her, and if none of that was remotely enough, heartbreakingly, he even abused her while she was still a teenager. Can you imagine that? Shirley Temple, the girl who lit up so many movie screens and brought joy to millions, barely allowed any joy of her own. By 1949, she'd had enough. She filed for divorce and won custody of Linda, proving once again her incredible strength and resolve. Good for you, Shirley, don't look back. By the time she turned 22, Shirley's acting career was officially behind her. It's hard to believe someone who starred in more than 40 films could step away so young. Oh, but Hollywood doesn't care, you know, when you're deemed less marketable. And Shirley had already lived a lifetime in the spotlight. You know, it's kind of like when TV shows have kid characters. They have a hard time when the actors grow up. Except this is a person's entire career, and it's way more dismissive and cruel. But instead of trying to cling to her fame, she chose to find a new path, and while stepping away from the cameras gave her a chance to build a more stable life. Unfortunately, trouble still found her in a way that no one could have predicted.
I couldn't make it work, and so unfortunately, I had to get divorced.
In her later years, Shirley faced a battle even more personal than her struggles in Hollywood, a diagnosis of breast cancer. But in true Shirley Temple fashion, she didn't let it defeat her. Instead, she broke major ground. This was a time when people didn't really openly discuss such illnesses, but Shirley became one of the first public figures to talk about her diagnosis and treatment. She shared her story to help other women, paving the way for more awareness and open conversations about breast cancer. Once again, Shirley showed the world that she was not just a child star, she was a fighter and a trailblazer.
I think I started my career sort of at the Shrine Auditorium.
Through it all, Shirley's resilience never wavered, whether it was escaping a toxic marriage, leaving behind the glitz and gunk of Hollywood, or facing down a life-threatening illness. She handled every challenge with grace and determination. Her story isn't just about a little girl who could sing and dance. It's about a woman who overcame more than most of us can even imagine, and left a lasting legacy that went far beyond the silver screen.
Wait for Mimi too.
In the words of Shirley Temple herself. Nowadays, Shirley Temple's reign as America's sweetheart feels like it's from another world. This little girl helped shape an entire era. She became a symbol of hope and joy during tough times. But as much as she influenced her time, she was also a product of it, navigating a Hollywood that often took more than it gave. And so, for those of you curious about what it was really like to grow up as Shirley Temple, please check out her 1988 autobiography, Child Star. It offers a first-hand look, and it's incredible.
Temple with the 7 dwarfs from Walt Disney's Snow White and the...
Over 500 pages of her candid reflections, a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the most unique life of a child star turned cultural icon. One of the most touching parts of the book is her account of her friendship with Bill Bojangles Robinson. You know, her legendary co-star in The Littlest Rebel. Their bond defied the racial divides at the time, which makes it even more special. Shirley spoke about how Robinson taught her to dance, not by watching his steps, but by listening to the rhythm. For a girl in a really high-pressure industry with not a lot of people looking out for her, Robinson's encouragement was a lifeline. Terribly, Robinson faced a lot of unfair treatment from the rest of the crew, but to Shirley, he was simply the best friend she could hope for. Their friendship is a beautiful reminder that genuine connections can flourish even in the most difficult of times. What's remarkable about Child Star is how it feels like Shirley is sitting down with you, sharing her story over some coffee. Despite the exploitation, the abuse, and the turmoil she endured, her tone remains remarkably upbeat. You get the sense that she never lost that joy that made her so beloved on screen. But she doesn't shy away from the darker parts of her life, and she also celebrates the resilience and friendships that carried her through. It's a testament to the kind of person she was, someone who faced enormous challenges, but always found a way to keep going.
For marrying an actress.
They never allow anyone to be in the social register who's...
And so for fans of Shirley Temple, or really anyone interested in the golden age of Hollywood, her autobiography really is a must-read. It's not just a story about a child star, it's a deeply human account of perseverance, hope, and the power of finding joy even when the odds are stacked against you. And honestly, isn't that the kind of story we all need just a bit more of?
Inside me where it's dark, I walk around like no wind.
When the stars go out. By the time Shirley Temple grew up, Hollywood had made it clear there was no room for a grown-up Shirley on the silver screen. Her roles were already drying up before she decided to step away. But here's the thing about Shirley, she never let life's setbacks define her. She had big dreams and she was determined to achieve every single one of them. Even if it meant trading the stage for an entirely new kind of spotlight.
Or talked baby talk, or treated me as a child.
Her first marriage may have ended in heartbreak, but fate had other plans. Shirley met a businessman, Charles Alden Black. And after they dated for barely 2 weeks, they tied the knot. And this time, it was the real deal. The two stayed married for an incredible 55 years. And here's the kicker. Charles had never seen a single one of her films. But together, they built a stable, loving life. And Shirley finally found the kind of partnership she'd always deserved.
You what?
For the high school paper. I'm the editor-in-chief.
Now with a new name, Shirley Temple Black, she set her sights on a different stage, politics. This wasn't entirely new territory. Her fame as a child star had already brought her into the rooms with some of the most powerful people in the world. We're talking J. Edgar Hoover, Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, as an adult, Shirley used that same poise to advocate for causes close to her heart. Although her bid for Congress didn't pan out, she impressed President Nixon enough to land a job. No big deal, just a role at the United Nations General Assembly. Oh my bad, that's kind of a huge deal.
And I sincerely ask the citizens of this district.
And it's there she championed aging Americans, environmental issues, and refugees. If you can believe it, her political career soared even higher in 1974, when she became the U.S. ambassador to Ghana. Shirley wasn't just a figurehead, she helped train other ambassadors too, and later became the first woman to hold the title of ambassador to Czechoslovakia. A role previously reserved for career diplomats. Now, even in a field dominated by men, Shirley broke barriers again, earning respect through her hard work and unwavering dedication. But around this time, Shirley faced another major challenge, the breast cancer. Again, back then, this was a taboo topic, one people avoided discussing, but Shirley wasn't one to stay quiet. She went public with her diagnosis and mastectomy, helping to break down the stigma surrounding cancer and paving the way for open conversations about women's health.
Just this, I have to go home, okay?
Her bravery didn't just normalize talking about cancer, it gave women a stronger voice in their own medical care. This was a critical step forward at a time when doctors often made decisions without consulting their female patients. For Shirley, it was just another way to be brave and to make the world a better place. From the punishment box at baby burlesks, to helping the world understand cancer, that mindset, born out of tough lessons, followed her throughout her life.
Show her when she was 11, but her career actually started when she was 3.
Shirley rose above every challenge. She defied the stereotypes of child stars, turning a turbulent upbringing into a life of purpose and service. The golden Shirley Temple Black, she passed away in 2014 at the age of 85, but her legacy will continue to live on. She didn't just entertain us as a child, she inspired us as an adult. From the silver screen to diplomacy, she showed us what it means to give back, to find strength in adversity, and to leave the world a little better than you found it.
I did this last night. That's over with.
Who would have thought that little curly-haired 3-year-old who danced her way into our hearts would go on to teach us so much? Shirley Temple didn't just charm us, she led by example, proving that no matter where we start, we can always rise higher.
Pardon me, did I hear you say spinach?
Spinach.
What an incredible life Shirley Temple lived, an actress, a diplomat, and way too rarely just a kid. So here's to Mrs. Temple, a woman who proved time and again that she was so much more than the role she played. So now it's your turn. Please get down in the comment section and tell us your favorite Shirley Temple memory.
I want to ride the pony.
Oh, careful, miss.
Maybe a movie that made you laugh, cry, or even try a little tap dancing yourself. Did I forget something interesting about Shirley Temple's life? Well, please add it. After all, this is a toast to the fantastic Shirley Temple. The past is filled with remarkable lives like Shirley's, and we're here to bring those stories back to life for you. And so if you enjoyed this little journey through her world, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a memory. But most importantly, from my entire team here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.